Okay, when the time comes, I will not be showing you the clips of the original running. In other words, before I did all the machining work on the carbs that were past tense on here, because it's absolutely pointless, because none of that machining work helped anything. It ran like crap still.
Okay, I guess I should give you something. This is how bad it ran.
And so I gave up. And here's that pile of junk over here. So there's the original carbs, the original rack, the original everything. I got these off eBay. Now the interesting part or story behind these is that they have a very weird number stamped on them. Something I've never seen before. And I think I can show you because you can see it right where it's supposed to be on the top of the intake side of the carb body. These are 058As. 058A is an alpha.
That number pretty much means nothing to us at this point because we can't find it in any guide or anything online to say what those particular carbs are or were or is jetting, that sort of thing. So as I explained in the other video, we're just going to go ahead and use them. And that's what I'm doing here in accelerated form, where I'm taking the two racks and making one good one based on the 058A rack, because they are identical to the other rack that was on there. As far as measurements and so forth go, they're exactly the same.
This will be the final, and I mean final chapter on the 71 CB750. I'll show you how it runs. I did put the coils in. I'll show you the running first, and then I'll put some clips in that's essentially going to be voiceover, because I want to go over how I do these aftermarket coils, because they need some adaptation usually. These were no exclusion to that rule, that these absolutely had to be adapted and some modification to get them to fit, which again is almost always the case with aftermarket coils, even if they look identical to the originals, which these were pretty damn close. Okay, with any luck, the damn mic's working. I'll switch sides here with you so you can see it better. But this is it. This is the best I can get it to run. With the, the new coils are in. Like I said, after this, I'll go over the, in pretty good detail how I did this, because, I know this is probably something people are interested in. Not me yapping, so let's go ahead and get it going. See, I smell burning oil. It does a little better after it warms up. It's been sitting for a little while now since I ran it before. Definitely popping, popping, popping. Definitely popping on all four. And when it gets good and hot, it runs a lot better. Exhaust impulse feels about the same. Still think number 4 is not as good, but close. Pretty snappy. Yeah, so that's as good as I can get it to run. I have a theory about this. My theory is the reason why the compression is so high at 150, which I have not seen out of one of these things, even a fresh top end. And I have done a fresh top end on a CB750 before in that chopper. And that one, now it wasn't with the rings broken or nothing. That front end was, that top end rather, front end, that top end was tight. When I measured everything up, the cylinder bores were excellent as far as the bore to piston clearance. There was like no wear on them. Everything was within tolerance. And I completely did top end. That's an older one, so it had the newer kind of valve keepers. If you watch the video, I show you all that. Like this one had the older style that you'd traditionally see. And so I switched it over to the older style valves and the valve keepers because it's more solid that way. All you have to do is change a couple parts in there and it's easy to do. You know, after I ran it for a little while, it was doing about not quite 130 PSI times 4 cylinders. And again, that was a fresh top end job and I know it was good. The thing ran really well. Ran better than this thing for sure. So why is this one giving us trouble? Well, I can guarantee after we run it for a while, we take these brand new spark plugs out and they're gonna be black. And that's because this thing's burning oil. I think the oil control rings are shot and the cylinders are wet. That's why it's got an artificially elevated compression reading on all 4 cylinders. Interestingly, it's the same on all 4, which, you know, is kind of suspicious as far as, not really suspicious, but more, I guess indicative would be more the word for oil control rings as opposed to like valve stem seals and it's dumping oil down inside 1 or 2 cylinders or something like that. And you have artificially high in just those 2 or 1 as the case may be. So I would say this thing's got oil control ring problems. That's oil that is, it's fouling up the plugs and that's what's happening to it. And it starts to load up after a while. It doesn't smell rich. I mean, it's supposed to have 40s. I put 42s in it. I mean, that's really not a big change. It's got 110s in the mains. That's around where you typically see it. 105 was according to the list, but that's on the carburetors that are actually listed in some sort of a chart. These, as I explained in that update video, are not. So this thing is not going to run any better than it's going to run right here. And I'm almost certain it's because you can smell it. As soon as you start it in particular, you can smell it. This sumbitch is burning oil. And when it does, again, I'm pretty sure it's just, you know, fouling the plugs and then it starts running crappy after some time. Now, to be fair, just sitting here running it is not a really good way to test it. We need to get it out on the road and give it some thrashing and see how it responds.
Later in the video, I do this, and I took it around the block, and after 1 or 2 runs around the block, I think my theory is accurate. It does seem to be better.
This only got 12,000 miles on it. You can see that without the freaking glare. Yeah, about right there. But it runs a hell of a lot better now. I wish it was more perfect, but it's not. It's just not going to be. And so this is where we're going to leave it. So I'm not going to do any more on this while it's on the floor because the stuff that I did, I'll show you the voiceover of all the coil work. That's very easy to do when it's on the floor and I can sit in my roll around chair and just move around and do, I don't need these anymore, and do all this coil work. It's in the perfect height for it. But the rest of the stuff I got to do, I need the thing up on the lift for, and then we'll put the tank on it. I'll take it for a ride and put it to bed.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get into putting the coils on the CB750. And I'll show you that in some detail. I'm going to do some accelerated footage here too to make it so you're not suffering so much. Naturally, the first step is to take the old ones off. So that's what I'm doing here. Everything's corroded, of course. And that's a bolt and nut going through it. So, I got to go get a wrench, which is just wonderful. Figured I'd just unscrew these screws that hold the coil down to the brackets, and it wasn't having it. They are really corroded in. And these brackets aren't right anyway. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But you can see right there, they're a little bit weird. Okay, so normal operation of seized fasteners. We use a pair of vice grips and try to spin them out under power. Get the little restraints for the wires out of the way and so forth, just to get them separated from those brackets. I'm only showing you this wiring diagram here because I didn't mark the coils 2-3 versus 1-4 because I don't need to. I knew it ran, and I knew the wiring was right. And I know that the yellow wire is for the 2-3 coil, and the blue wire is for the 1-4 coil. So that's just an example of how we can use the wiring diagram to verify that we're putting stuff back in the way it came off. That is, if you can remember how the brackets go, which I'm having a hard time right now. But I figured it out, and then we have to do a little modifications on one of them as well, which you'll see here shortly. These are, of course, the aftermarkets, and I'm taking the M6 bolts out of them because we're not going to use those. We're going to use 5mm screws to go back down into the brackets, just like the old ones were. And I did clean up the brackets and just wire wheeled them off. They're aluminum, they're not going to rust. They'll just oxidize a little bit. They were pretty trashy the way they were. And so I'm just kind of lining things up, seeing how things are going to go together. And I see that we're going to have an interference issue with at least one coil where it comes as far as the power lead goes into the back side, because on the original coils it comes in the front and the back. So I'm just continuing the mock-up and trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to do about the clearance issue with the wires. I got to use the milling machine to mill a little clearance off one of those brackets. I'm just showing this because I stuck the vise on and didn't even eye it in or anything. And the damn thing was trammed dead nuts. Yeah, sometimes that happens that way. So right now I'm just setting a piece up, which is one of the brackets. I think it's for the 2 and 3 coil. The rear bracket on the right side coil for 2 and 3, because it's the power lead, the main B plus that comes into the coil that essentially would be hitting this bracket. So I just have to mill some clearance in it so that doesn't occur. And I will show you it up close and personal here after we do this and get it bolted up and mocked up fully. This whole reason for doing that relief, because of those wires right there that go into the coil for the B+. You can see how it gives it some space between the plug, where it plugs into the back of the coil on that bayonet connector, and the connector itself. Otherwise, it would be pressed very hard up against there and potentially short. Okay, so now it's just a matter of bolting everything up. And remember, the original screws were M5 by 0.8 thread pitch. That's what went into those little brackets. We're going to be using a different screw, which is actually an imperial screw. These are number 8 by 32s because I don't have long enough M5s. So the reason why 32 TPI works is because it's very close to an 0.8 as far as the thread pitch goes. Keep that in mind. And, it's also a function of the quality of the thread that is in the bracket, which, Honda's usually pretty tight about that, but they fit perfectly. So that's what we're using. And it worked out really well, and they were the perfect length. Both of these aftermarket coils come with blue wires. for the trigger wires or the signal wires that come from the points. The blue one is supposed to be on the left side for the 1 and 4, but for the 2 and 3, I want it to be yellow like it's supposed to be. So I just replaced that blue wire with a yellow one. Less chance of me mucking it up. On these old bikes, if you don't have a voltage drop across these bullet connectors, well, call an exorcist because there's some sort of demon in there. So I'm going to use a Dremel and clean off these bullet connectors, wipe them down, get really anal, and also use some Brasso here in a moment. Get that brass really clean and then re-clean them again with some more brake clean. I also do the female side of it too here with a Dremel. I'll save you the pain of that one, but it makes good connections. While I'm in here, since I have the space and the coils are removed, I'll just give it a good clean inside the frame area with some glass cleaner just to tidy it up because it was pretty nasty and dirty inside there. Why not? This is the time to do it. And now it's just a matter of installing the coils, feeding the wires through, yada yada, getting everything in there. These are a little stiff, even new, so you know, it is a little bit of a challenge, but yeah, a little patience and perseverance, you can get it done. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and freeze it and show you that bracket. This is what I was mentioning before about that bracket being a little weird that holds the coils. Look up front by the yellow wire. See there's a tang in the frame that I'm lining up to a hole. That's the only hole that holds this bracket in through that boss on the front of the bracket. The back one doesn't have anything matching on the frame, so I don't even know if these are correct for this model. But it works, so we're going with it. We'll just put a new bolt and a new nut in there because the other one was completely trashed and corroded. And we'll tighten her up, and that's about it as far as mounting the coils. Now the next step is just making sure that we hook the correct HT leads up to the correct cylinder. And then of course just plug in the blue and the yellow and the black with a white wire, the power wires, after I pin them out with some bullet connectors. Admittedly, I am rather anal when it comes to electrical wiring, so I spend some time here with wire management, making sure I don't have the wires too long or too short. Once I'm happy with that, then strip it out, put a brand new crimp bullet connector on there with the appropriate insulation plastic. Now these are aftermarket, they're junk anyway, but they're the best you can pretty much get nowadays, and that's just the way it is. So there's a couple of tricks we can do with this as well. I'm using some no oxidation electrical grease. This is not, I repeat, not dielectric grease. This is actually connection enhancement grease. You use it on like circuit breakers, in home breaker panels, things like that. And again, I'm working on the wire management here to just make sure that it's neat and it's not going to come loose and it just doesn't look like crap. I stuff it in a certain way to start with and then make a change and decide to do it differently. But there's a female side, and we're going to kind of crimp those up a little bit to tighten up the connectors. But always use the proper crimping tool on stuff like this, which I do have, of course. That's that blue-handled one. And it makes your life a lot easier when you're pinning these things out. So once I get everything together, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get this shoved in there and zip tied up the way I like it. And I didn't like it. So once I put it in, got everything all tightened up in there, I'm like, I don't like the way that looks. I end up pulling it back out because it just ain't right. And doing it a little differently. And I'll show you that here in a sec. Whether it's a curse or an attribute, I do not know, but I just can't stand it when the wires aren't right. And I just don't like the way these aftermarket connectors fit. So I put some clear shrink tubing over those connectors to back them up. And that's what we're heating up with a little torch right there. And then I'm rerouting them in the position that I really like them. Now, this is important, I think, to do whenever you're doing these with wasted spark or individually 4 coils like on a VFR or something. Maybe not as important because the coils aren't stacked next to each other. Definitely label the coils. It's real easy to cross over to the wrong spark plug with an HT lead. I'll go ahead and leave this clip at regular speed for now because I need to go over some important stuff regarding the HT lead lengths. Now, you don't want them too long, you don't want them too short. There's a couple reasons for this. Obviously, too long look like shit. You don't need them that long. They might rub against the exhaust, etc. Too short is even worse, of course, because they won't reach. But too short also means not leaving any real estate in the future for some poor technician that needs to dress the end of these wires. They are closest to the heat source, the cylinder head naturally, and over the years you simply have to dress them once in a while because inside the cap there's like a sheet metal screw that screws into the copper stranded core of the wire. So this is what I'm dealing with as far as the length goes. Now I'm putting some silicone grease on. I always use silicone grease so the rubber caps and other rubber parts that rub against the a rubber duck does not give you a fight. And all you have to do is just put the cap on and screw it in. And that's what I'm doing here. So it's all relatively very simple. You just have to, A, make sure you got the right wire going to the right cylinder. And B, make sure that the length is where you need it. And again, think about that tech down the road or that mechanic down the road in a few years. I always do that because it probably will be me. So I want to make sure that it's right. And I'm going to do it right now. I hate dealing with cylinders 2 and 3 on a CB750. That angle toward the center is just absolutely ridiculous. It's hard to get the spark plugs out and back in and etc. So right now I'm just trying to do the length and then I'm marking the length of the cable with a paint stick. Now it's time for our compulsory doggy clip. Ichabod is doing 99% better than he was, and so he's out here enjoying the time with me. Center cylinders are also a pain in the ass because they are closer to the coils. That way we have to cut them back shorter, and we're into that thicker heat protection part of the insulation on the outside of the HT lead. So I'm cutting them off very carefully with a razor knife. I'm making 2 marks actually. I'm making a mark where I want to cut the thicker insulation, and then I make a mark where I want to trim the length of the HT lead itself. Don't confuse the two of those because you could screw it up. We have to leave a little bare area there, you know, without that insulation so we can actually put the cap on the backside of the spark plug cap like that, and then screw the cap itself on, which are straight on 2 and 3. They're not angled over at a 90 like on 1 and 4.
Okay, folks, so this is going to be the last of this video number 3. This thing's, or part 3, this thing is back together in as close to form as I can get, with the exception of down here, the clutch is slipping. I took it for a test ride, and let me tell you what, this is the weird thing about these bikes. The ones that give you the most trouble, the ones that are the biggest pain in the ass, end up running the best. I don't get it. This thing runs pretty damn good. I mean, I'm like, holy shit. Wide open throttle. I mean, when you're at lower RPMs and you try to crack the throttle, it doesn't want to have any bit of it, of course. You got to have the RPMs up a little bit more. That's probably because I got to jet it up a little bit. 105 would be well, I'm not really sure with these carburetors. That's the thing because of the numbers on them. But assuming they're basically the same as the ones that were on there, I forgot those numbers now. I'll look it up for you. It would be 105 in the mains. I got 110s in, and then the 42s. And the slows, which are the 34 mil 750 longer jets, which work really well. I mean, I'm really kind of surprised. I thought this thing would run like a piece of crap. It runs damn good. I wish I could take you with me and show you. Unfortunately, I just don't have any good device to record, you know, that kind of thing on. Even the GoPros nowadays, they suck, and they're really expensive. You can't get anything that doesn't have good vibration control. And these old bikes vibrate like a son of a bitch, so kind of hard to do. Somebody has a recommendation on that. My iPhone 17 doesn't do it. The 17 Pro might because it got that third camera, but I didn't buy one of those, so too bad, so sad. Yeah, I don't get it. This thing runs really well. Let me set you up and show you. I think I have enough gas in it for another run. She ain't got no gas in it. Yes, it does. Knock it off, Carl. Carl Childers. Still smells burning oil when you start it. It's a skosh high, I know, but probably about 1100. It wants to run there, I'm leaving it there. Tack is way off anyway. I had an external tack on. That's probably about 1100 or 1050. Close enough. This works. You know, I could do, the only thing I could do is I could bring you guys up to the side of the road and just turn the camera on and make a couple runs up and down the road, and at least you could see that, but that's about the best I can do. So I got to go up to the mailbox anyway and get some shit out of the mailbox. So I'll go set you up there, and then I'll bring this up there and run it up and down the road. At least you get to see that part. Signals even work. Okay, so what did I do? I spent all morning basically doing electrical work on the front mostly, because he wants this rideable, you know, take it on the road. I'm assuming you're going to get a tag for it, I hope. That's why I can't take it very far, and I ain't got no tag. So I wanted to make sure all the safety factors as far as lighting and horn and so forth were operational. None of that shit worked. Well, the low beam worked, high beam didn't. That took me about an hour to figure out. Hey, the fawns. Because it was just hooked up wrong inside there. Somebody that did the wiring did it wrong, but I had a hard time finding the wire. I used a wiring diagram. That is invaluable in this situation. And got it working. And then I worked on making sure the signals would work, which they do. I rechecked the charging system, and it's, again, charging about 13.8 or so, even with the high beam on. And then I also repaired the horn. It wasn't working. You can hear it now, it does. Yeah, I think you heard it before, but I had the engine running. It's pretty sick, but it works. So it's legal. Anyway, the problem with that is, I'll tell you right up front, on these old CB750s and perhaps other Hondas as well, they ground, essentially it's a hot all the time, or ignition hot to the horn, and then the trigger is on the negative side, on the ground side. So when you push the horn button, you're completing the circuit on the negative side, not on the hot side. So what happens is they're getting a ground through the handlebars and through the the steering head basically. There's no separate ground wire going back. And that is always a problem. I had to take this apart and clean all that and get all that taken, get it, all the, the green snot out of it and so forth. And then put this little tiny switch back together, which was a real prick. And then get it working. But signals again work. Horn works. Oh yeah, the front brake light wasn't working either because this has, just like the Z1 900s and the KZ1000 has a hydraulic. Now I had to redo these wires. There was a bad connection on them. And I looped them up so I could wire tie them around the body of that valve. It's a little pressure valve that reacts to, pressure switch rather, reacts to your front brake. It closes the circuit. But I didn't want these to pull out, so these go up and then come back down. I made them longer. That way these bullet connectors will never pull out because they're wire tied north of that. So I fixed that. That works good. The rear brake light works. The tail light works. And you already saw the headlights work and the horn. So I got my P's and Q's straightened out on that, and then finished up a couple of last minute stuff. The fuel lines were a pain in the ass because I wanted to put inline filters. I did that only because the tank looks like crap and I'm not dealing with tanks. That's the way it is. So now we know we need a clutch because it's slipping. You may have heard that when I first took off, it would go, in second gear it would go like that. Well, it's because it's slipping. So I'll do all that off camera. I'm not going to do any more of this work on this bike on camera. This is it. I'm done. I got other things going on, including some health challenges that I have to focus on. Nothing major, but it's going to take me out of the workshop here for probably about a week. And then we'll get back to doing other stuff. Now, I don't know which video is going to come out first, but I have a video, obviously. I have a video on the CB750. It's part 3. Duh, obviously you knew that. I got a video on doing the saber forks over completely. And high drama. There's always high drama around here. Let's just say that those are no longer the chrome bars that were in here originally when I got it. The fork tube chrome bar part, the tubing part, has been replaced, but not before having to do some shenanigans on it. And you'll have to watch that video. I don't know which one's going to come out first. Probably this one, I'm not sure. And I'm still in the editing process, obviously on this one, but on the one for the saber forks as well. And I got problems with the sidecar rig where, well, it basically runs like dog shit. And I don't know exactly why. I suspect that I have 1 or 2 CV diaphragms that have let go in that thing. They're original ones. There were Sabre ones, but original 82 or 83s at least. And I think one of them's cracked because it idles great. It's not the slow circuit. It's not the transition circuit. When you get into this thing, it absolutely falls on its face and misfires. And I've checked the coils. It has the individual coilover plugs with those modules. Those are fine. I tossed a new set of spark plugs in it just for shits and giggles. Still does it. Got to be in the carburetors, and I'm almost guaranteeing it's going to be 1 or 2 of them diaphragms. Maybe we'll get into that in a video, maybe not. I don't know. So until then, I hope you got a kick out of this one. Video 3. I can't even remember at this point what's in the editing up to this point in time in the video. I cannot remember. So hopefully this all goes together. My apologies if it doesn't. We'll catch you on the far side or the back side of my procedure. Get back to it, and then I take my trip and we get back to normal operations. Until then, as always, thanks for watching. Don't just repair, restore. See you on the next video.